Okay, thank you. This is the planning board meeting of Tuesday, May 6th. Tonight we will have Dick will be on for full voting, full participation. Jennifer is our backup. So if Dick or someone else falls out, Jennifer, stand by. Otherwise, we have a quorum. Is there a motion to open the meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Our first matter this evening is a public hearing. This is on Steinberg. This is at 92 Random Farms Drive. This is an application for a site development plan approval for a construction of an in-ground pool, patio, and related improvements.
Felicia went to go get the plans, so she'll be right back. I'm gonna project them on the screen.
Okay, great, thank you.
She just had to,
Oops.
Which side are you on tonight, Kevin?
I'm on the good side.
And what side is that?
Exactly.
Hopefully your good side. Good evening, Chairman Kirkwood and members of the board. My name is Kellen Cantrell. I'm here along with the engineer of record, David Gessel, in the back there. Representing the application of 92 Random Farms Drive for a swimming pool and a patio. The property consists of 1.02 acres in the R1A zoning district within the Random Farms Conservation Subdivision. The existing home and driveway were constructed in 1989-1990. The proposal that we're showing tonight entails removing the existing deck and placing a 16 by 40 fiberglass pool, a 1,440 square foot patio, equipment pad for the swimming pool equipment, code compliant fencing, and the required stormwater mitigation. We're not proposing to modify the existing 70-foot conservation buffer area in the rear of the property, which is designated on file plat number 22-276. All of the proposed improvements are zoning compliant. There will be no construction activity within the steep slopes area of the property. The property does not contain any wetlands, watercourses, or wetland watercourse buffers. There are no FEMA floodplains. No variances are being requested or required as part of this application. So a full stormwater mitigation plan has been designed for the 100-year storm event as proposed and is consistent with the New York State DEC and local code standards. Also provided is a full stormwater pollution and prevention plan, a SWIP, which provides all the necessary protective measures as required by the town code. Lastly, the size of the site disturbance does not meet the minimum threshold of 5,000 square feet for projects within the New York State DEC East of Hudson watershed. Therefore, that permit is not required. So the engineer of record is available and can speak more in depth on the project plans and design elements, as well as the 3 staff memorandums that we received on Friday. And I also wanted to briefly note that the application packet has the support of all adjacent neighbors as submitted and the HOA from Random Farms. So thank you for your time, and if there are any questions, you can ask me or you can ask the engineer, and I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Gessel and he'll speak to the engineering details of the project.
Okay, great, thank you.
So as Kellen mentioned, the project is in the conservation buffer area.
Sorry, one second. It's a public hearing. We have to open the public hearing. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sorry. We'll still keep your remarks, Kellen.
So Kellen basically said most of what I would present before you as far as the background for the project, the location within the conservation subdivision, the area of disturbance. So basically the project involves the proposed in-ground, preformed fiberglass swimming pool within the rear yard of the property. On the plan before you, we did present on the previous screen the full SWIP, the environmental protection, silt fencing, staging, contractor storage areas on the previous page of the plans. And in this page before you here, we're looking at the proposed design, which would include the removal of a wood framed composite deck structure that feeds off the back of the house and replacing that with a pool patio and an extension of that patio to the house itself in lieu of the deck. So the deck goes away and it's gonna be all paver patio. We did propose stormwater mitigation for both water quality and water quantity in the form of the three infiltrator units that are proposed to the left side of the property. And the infiltrator units proposed will offset the net increase of impervious coverage, which is about 2,100 square feet.
Will you use those for your annual drain down of the pool? Or
well-
what's the system that you'll have in
So-
place for the annual drain down?
So fiberglass pools by nature, you don't draw down for winter. You may just draw it below the skimmer box and the jets, which you would then replace and insert a plug to winterize the pool. But typically the manufacturer does not want this pool to draw down for buoyancy purposes and things like that. They don't want the pool to float up out of the ground.
Okay, well, there's something here in the notes,
We do.
the refill feature is not proposed, the proposed pool is to be filled annually by a pool delivery tank.
Well, the
So
initial,
we'll just bring it back up to level.
the initial fill would be from a
Right.
tank and the pool would be topped off through a garden hose for makeup water. If Mother Nature doesn't keep the pool topped, a garden hose from a spigot that's equipped with backflow would be
So the drain down will be just very moderate.
6 inches. No more than
Just
6
blow the
inches.
skimmers and that kind of stuff, okay.
Yep. So-
Again, will those,
Those are sized to withstand
Okay.
6 inches,
okay,
beyond more than 6 inches, we looked at the modeling, for both pool drawdown, but also for stormwater mitigation. The stormwater mitigation actually is a larger threshold than the drawdown.
Okay.
As far as volume goes.
Good.
And staging through the property, delivery to the pool will be through the driveway. The property is pretty much at grade. The pool will come in on a flatbed and we'll be, walk to the backyard, with a machine with a spreader bar and there's lift points for the
is it
pool.
one piece or you have? a
It's
couple
one
pieces?
piece pool. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. We do propose the pool barrier, the code compliant pool barrier. The owner is looking to heat the pool, so there's a proposal for a propane tank.
Where's the pool equipment,
If you face the house, the left side, kind of where you have that green
yeah,
barrier, that's the pool equipment.
and that will be enclosed somehow with some sort of fencing or something?
Typically evergreen screening or fencing, we didn't propose fencing, but something of that sort. Usually evergreen shrubs or screening.
We normally ask to see the location of other homes contiguous to the property.
Okay.
And especially we back up on Whitlaw, I guess, in the rear, and then we should see those locations just to make certain that we're comfortable with the distances. I'm sure we are, but we should have that in the next round of sketches.
This property is pretty unique, the fact that the frontage is really on Whitlaw and it has a access easement through Random Farms.
Right.
There's basically nobody in the neighboring property that has a vantage point to view the pool or the way the topography of the hill and the upland woodland areas are presented. And the neighbor to the right, 90 Random Farms, they have a swimming pool, very similar in nature. The house as situated, there's heavily screening along the right side of this property that serves as a buffer.
Okay.
And the property to the left, it's a rear yard that extends to the top of the hill with Whitlaw. There's really no house there, no structure. It's an upland wooded area, similar to the applicant's property.
Okay.
So, but
Yeah, but if you could just show that on the next sketch.
Absolutely. Yep.
What those and what the distances are.
sure,
You don't have to draw the house in there, there's
Yeah.
detail or anything, just a box.
just setbacks and the structure. Yep. Understood.
And I may have missed it, the propane tank is for the heated pool or is that for a generator?
No, it's for the pool heater itself.
Thanks.
The house has propane already. It would supplement with a larger tank to serve both the kitchen and the pool.
There looks like there's the same sort of treatment on the map. Are you replacing the front also with some patio?
The front yard? No.
One of the sketches, it looked like the same sort of stone that you had in the back that for the patio
The
that you're
blue stone
proposing.
paver?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if that is something new or is it something that's
It's all
pre-existing and just,
Well, it's-
okay. Okay,
So, if there's any questions,
yeah, Sabrina, you had some comments?
Sure, for the board's information, it is a type 2 action in accordance with the State Environmental Quality Review Act. When it comes to zoning, this is one of the outer lots within the Random Farm subdivision. So when that conservation subdivision was approved, the half acre standards were utilized for most of the interior lots, but those lots facing the other residential 2-acre zoning district were sized at 1 acre. This is one of those 1 acre properties. And what's unique about this property being in the Random Farm subdivision is that there is no clearing and grading limit line on this property. There is a 70-foot buffer on the property which is identified on the plans and needs to be carried over to your most recent survey. One of the things that the applicant did here is they identified I would assume it's a construction limit area, and they termed it clearing and grading limit line.
Okay.
I don't think you want that to be labeled clearing and grading limit line. I would suggest that you change that because then it will institute confusion if ever this application was to come back.
Yep.
So we wanna make sure that there's no confusion there. From a setback situation, the front yard setback on this is supposed to be 60 feet, I think it is. And it was approved previously, the two surveys indicated as 57.3 feet, not 60. So your number today is 56.67 feet. And so my question to you was there a variance that was initially issued, or kind of what's going on there?
So the code changed, that's what happened. So this house was built in 1990, the code at the time said 50 feet setbacks. Code changed to 60 feet in 1995.
So you wanna put a note on this table, underneath the conservation table, that it's pre-existing, non-conforming, so that there's no misunderstanding as to why. And then the question about the coverage calculation, the coverage analysis plan is unclear if you have calculated half of the length of the common driveway. So getting back to the chairman's comments about the neighborhood and seeing the neighboring property, is that the whole extent of the driveway?
So our numbers did factor in the full extent of coverage that's on the physical property for the applicant.
Right, but if it is a common driveway,
What's off the property, we did not account, because they have an access easement, it's not part of the parcel.
okay, so we need a better plan that depicts that driveway with the neighbor, so I can confirm this.
So we gave you the area analysis for what's on the parcel.
Correct.
What was, like I said, off the parcel, it was not part, because it's not, they have an easement for the other, it's a common driveway for multiple neighbors.
Correct, and so typically, if your neighbor is utilizing part of a portion of your driveway to get to their house, then your coverage is half,
Okay.
not whole.
Sure.
And so, but I can't tell that from the information you provided.
So we could proportion, if you may, just walk up.
I need you on a site plan to show the driveways to each of the houses.
Just wanna show you where the demarcation is. This portion here, it's like a wishbone, it splits at the property line. So this, basically, this part here that we show is in controlling interest of our applicant.
Okay, so that apron area leading from the road to where it splits.
Yeah.
That's divided by 2.
Okay.
And then you take the entirety of the other leg.
That's off the parcel though. The apron, what's,
I need a better map to understand,
okay.
okay? Because right now, you have a driveway. If I'm looking at this driveway, so both access to these houses are off property?
There's a common access through part of our applicant's property, right here. And then from here it diverges and splits to number 90. The area that we're giving you is totally, the total area that's on our applicant's property. So the split to neighbor would be here, the common shared area would just be this little piece here.
Right, so you divide that little
Okay.
piece by half.
No problem, we can do that.
Right, and it just, we need to be consistent to understand that division.
Okay.
So is
And
this
is everything
a
below
road?
the line off property?
That's off the property, that's an easement, that's an access.
So everything below that hard, dark black line is off your property? Where it says south 64, yeah.
This whole area here leads to Random Farms, which is
Gotcha.
down in here somewhere.
And that's not in the calculation?
Not in calc, it's off the parcel.
Yeah, I assume that whenever they subdivided this, the access would be from
Whitlaw.
Whitlaw but the hill is so steep that they couldn't make the access there, so they just had to do the easement. That was my assumption, because the original subdivision plat doesn't show access to this parcel, but subsequently it does, so.
And then my last comment was just to show the houses and
The neighbor,
Yeah.
okay. We can do that.
Okay, great. Jeff, you had some comments?
Yes, we had some stormwater comments, yeah, nothing, there's they had to put some erosion controls on the plan just to call them out a little bit better. Some stormwater, some notes they had to add to it, the drawings kind of standard, just so, there's no question on where flow comes from and contractor certifications, things like that. Typical stormwater comments, there's some, nothing earth shattering, technical stuff, I'm not too concerned about it being satisfied relatively easily. That's like I said, nothing show-stopping on my end.
Okay. And no problems with it?
No, we actually, we did receive review memos last week and incorporated revisions already, not before this board, of course, but our next set of drawings do have all those notes
Good.
incorporated,
Okay.
including the environmental coordinator, so he did a bunch of notes on kind of standardization boilerplate type stuff for process and procedure, so that's on our drawings now, but we'll get on the next set there.
Okay, great.
So,
Something for us to look forward to.
absolutely.
Dennis, you had some comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my first general comment, and then you even alluded to with respect to potentially what you would do in front of the propane tank. So if you're gonna do any, botanicals, landscaping, whatever we do, just like to see that as part of the plan. So unsure, what you had in mind, but whatever it is, just show that on the plan. Species, locations, that type of thing. The next part of my memo was kind of like an homage to Bob Cioli, who he picked up on, and he's like, gee, I see you put a lot of this stuff on that, typically goes on engineering, and I said, I don't even know if he's here, but that was like my, yes, swan song comments there, so, and then just below that, there were just some notations, I think you just had some numbers carry over, from a block copy paste. I empathize, believe me. And the final comment was just, looking at the plan, strictly two-dimensionally, just, when the fencing crossed over into the conservation area, I just felt that, it was designated that for a reason, and you probably would not wanna put, any type of structure or materials that, are not biotic, with respect to this proposal, so I felt that, that should be pointed out and probably just look to move the fence out of that area, since that was the intention to be
Yep.
a conservation area.
Is that okay? Is that
Summarize my
workable?
comment.
Yeah,
Mr. Steinberg's here, and we had that conversation, so I think in the essence of moving forward to get approval, just always.
You need that second fence, cause according to the plans, there's another fence that comes here, right, that goes around, that already goes in the conservation.
There's existing fencing there,
It's not pool
it's
You
not pool
need-
compliant,
Yeah,
It's not pool compliant.
so we're proposing a full pool compliant.
New York State
fence.
4-foot pool compliant
Correct.
fence.
With all the hardware and everything that goes with it.
And why is it the other fence pool
I'll walk you-
compliant?
I'll walk you
Too
through.
short, too many holes?
This portion, there's two portions that could be salvaged. This aluminum picket fence could be salvaged and retrofitted.
Yeah.
This could be salvaged and retrofitted, this length here. The portion of deer fence that runs up the property, which mixes with chain link, and then ultimately goes to a stockade fence up on Whitlaw right of way. That's not gonna be,
Yeah.
but that's gonna remain as screening. That's a nice barrier for privacy.
Okay.
And to keep animals out, but otherwise, what's proposed is to retrofit the aluminum fence with pool compliant gates, a pin service gate at this location, and then a normal access gate at this location with retrofitted with self-closing, self-latching, locking hardware. Along what the owner laid out, the fence contractor is a nice area of openness. It's not in the upland wooded area where they can run a black vinyl chain link fence that's fully visible and passive. That's what's proposed here. Now, obviously, it could change based on, discussion.
I think it should follow the conservation
Yeah,
line,
yeah.
Yeah.
And is that the conservation line that
the red one.
Yeah.
The red one.
that kind
The
of,
one that we found was in the back, it runs to 70 feet off the back of the lot. We added what we thought this board would like to see possibly as a conservation buffer around the developed features of the property,
Well,
but
staff provided us with a site plan that showed this is the building envelope, and they said this should be your line.
by
So we
default,
said,
that was
fine,
the conversation we had with
we'll go
staff.
with that.
But again, this is not existing or,
Yeah.
it's something we proposed.
right, but there's a difference between a conservation line and a construction line.
Right.
Right, you don't have a clearing and grading limit line on this property, the only thing you have is that 70-foot buffer line. And so the intention here is to make sure that that 70-foot buffer line is not encroached from here till eternity.
If it so chooses for the board, we can remove the three sides and just keep that continuous 70 foot off the back as proposed with the plot that was originally developed. And then the board can decide if they just wanna restrict any tightening on the sides. Right now, there's no,
I don't think we have much appetite for, restricting you any further in
Okay.
terms of the sides or the front.
sure, I mean, it's developed space anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
So, but I think the conservation line is important, and
Yeah, I think that's actually called, sorry to interrupt, I think that's actually the original drawings call that a building envelope line.
Right,
There
for the
was
setting of the house.
Right, there was an original building envelope line that they changed to clearing and grading limit line.
right,
The applicant changed it.
What?
The applicant changed it to a clear.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and what I'm saying is you don't wanna call
You don't
that
wanna
clearing
call
Oh,
and
we'll
grading.
remove that, yeah, we'll take that off.
Right, but I think that as far as a fence, like a fence is a permanent demarcation, I think that we need to protect that buffer because you don't want anything interfering with the growth on the other side of that buffer.
Gotcha.
Well, would the board be satisfied if the fence followed the building envelope line in the side and the rear?
well, the conservation line is.
Yeah, follow the
Well,
Well,
conservation.
that's just in the
line-
rear
the
though,
line- the
that's
line-
not on the sides,
The line on record is the 70-foot line that traverses from this point just straight across.
just in the rear,
There's no,
there's nothing
Nothing on the sides, right.
on the plot. So we could meet that dimension here, then I think possibly keep what the owner's trying to
Sure.
accomplish on the sides.
On the sides, that's
Yeah,
fine.
and the right side is driveway, so
Yeah, I don't think we wanna restrict you on the sides, we just
Yeah.
wanna protect the back where the
Understood.
conservation is.
okay.
Good. Okay, so we'll continue the public hearing. Is there comments, questions, board members?
I just wanna clarify one thing, Dennis, you were talking about planting around the propane tank when you were just making that comment about screening?
Only because he included it as a potential option, so.
Yes, that's why I wanna clarify, okay.
Yeah.
So-
Propane tank is probably proposed to be buried at this location.
Oh, okay,
The pool equipment pad,
I know that's wrapped, for
this
this,
typically we put like evergreen, short statured evergreens, just to,
so if the propane's buried, forget it, but if it
Correct.
ends up being above ground,
absolutely.
okay,
Yeah, we picked it here for delivery, it's perfect for delivery.
yeah, makes sense.
Good.
You
Anyone
do have
else?
a long line
Any
run
questions?
from now the tank to the equipment.
That's, but this is
That's
gonna
a
get,
long
this is gonna
secondary
get-
run.
It's gonna get demoed, so we're gonna
Okay.
choose the shortest path, hopefully.
Okay. Are there any comments from the public on this application? Okay, if not, do we have a date for continuing the public hearing?
Next submission deadline is May 12th for the June 3rd meeting.
May 12th, for anything else that you need to submit?
would a resolution be drafted for that meeting, or we would just continue the public hearing?
What's the feeling of the board? I don't see a reason why we wouldn't have a resolution drafted.
I was just asking if you wanna suggest that they have a resolution, so I think I'm in favor of that.
And I don't follow exactly where it's gonna be at the end. You know, when we've got a couple of lines we have to talk about.
Yes.
When they have to fix and make it clear that they're not impinging on places that we
Right.
can't afford to have impinged
Exactly,
upon.
yep. Yep, Stuart, you okay?
And it's
Yeah,
not
good
good.
resolution?
Not clear, it's a
Yeah.
one way, hey, trust me, type of thing, and a lot of lines, and not really,
Yes,
I don't understand some of them.
yeah. I think again, Sabrina's asked for a better site plan, so we'll have more clarity, I think.
Yeah.
In terms of the driveways and neighbors, et cetera.
From my own knowledge, we're saying bring that's the new fence line down to somewhere aligned with the conservation.
Correct.
Yeah, So
And then anything on-
basically from that point, around here, it's just gonna follow this line.
And if you wanna bring it in closer to your house and however you wanna do that, that's your choice.
As long as it's within this, outside the 70 foot.
Yes.
Yes,
Absolutely.
and then the sides again, whatever you wanna do.
Just one last statement, one thing I heard from the engineering, we're not importing any fill, we're actually probably gonna be exporting fill for the obviously accumulate dirt with the excavation of the pool, so there's no fill proposed for the project.
Will there be some crushed stone brought in?
Some crushed stone for the infiltrator units and for the
Yeah.
perimeter drain, so that'll be.
Yeah, that's really what that note's for.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay, very good, thanks.
Thank you.
See you soon, yep. Our next item is a resolution. This is on the Panetti
Chairman, you
application.
need to vote to continue that
Oh, I'm sorry. Vote the-
And for the resolution.
and for the resolution.
Okay. So much work we have to do here. Is there a motion to instruct staff to draft a resolution for the next time around,
Motion,
June 3rd.
June 3rd?
motion,
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and is there a motion to continue the public hearing on June 3rd?
motion,
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, sorry. We go now to our next item. This is a resolution for the Panetti application. This is at 2 Main Street, Kisco Park. This is an application for a site development plan approval, application for a preliminary subdivision approval, stormwater management and erosion and sedimentation control for construction of a new single-family residence. So we have gone through the process on this application, including a public hearing. We closed the public hearing, I guess, the last time around, which was on when was it?
May 6th?
March 4th.
March 4th, okay.
Okay.
And so here we are, we have drafted up a resolution and we are ready to discuss that. And if the applicant has any questions on the resolution, we can take those, or board members have any. If not, we can move this forward.
So I have two questions, or comments. Number 9, applicant shall obtain a street opening permit and water tapping permit.
Ralph, what page and line number you on?
That is page 6, line number 11. It is also listed on page,
What
page 6, line 11?
I think we're looking
Page 4?
drafts? Yeah, page 4, I'm looking at maybe 52.
Yeah,
Oh, did you print it on 8.5 by 11?
we did,
That's why.
okay. So that could be it.
What did you say, Stuart? Page 4?
have page 4, line 52.
There it
Here,
is.
you wanna
use
Applicant
mine?
shall obtain, okay.
Is that number 9?
Just give him mine.
Yeah.
Yes, it's still number 9.
You can use mine.
Okay.
Okay, so that is also listed under prior to obtaining a building permit. So I would like to take it out from prior to signing the site plan and just leave it prior to issuance of the building permit.
Jeff and Bob, are you okay with that?
I see.
We usually put the requirement of the street opening permit or water tapping permit prior to the BP.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's our normal.
Is that what you're requesting, Ralph?
That's what I'm requesting. It's in both spots, I just wanna take it
Yeah,
out of.
Yeah, we don't usually get it prior to the site plan signing because that's not affiliated with any drafting that needs to be done on the permit, so I'm fine with it.
Correct, it's also listed on page 5, line 43.
So the language though between the two is different?
It's slightly different, you can use the language from,
9,
yeah, that's fine.
9 is a little more.
Yeah, insert that for 15?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Question on 14.
Yep.
Question is, sure, yeah, you use wooden lathes and flagging during construction, but we have had in the past problems where the wood rots, the flag flies away, and we offer that you should when you finally get all the lines ready, that you put in some sort of metal flat identification pieces, you know, so that I don't wanna break people's lawnmowers, but if it's done right, you know, then they can say, oh, I shouldn't be over there, or maybe a permanent fence.
Yeah, we've been requesting monuments of some sort to demarc the wetland areas.
During construction or post?
Yeah,
Even post.
This is during construction though, isn't it?
This is during construction, I believe, on 14. Permanent, I have boulders on the plan.
Oh, okay, yeah,
We
yeah,
had-
that's
we
right, yeah.
had agreed upon it.
Ralph, I think what he's suggesting is maybe stake some rebar, painted rebar of some sort as part, in addition to the
We can do that.
The wooden stakes?
yeah,
Yeah,
or
I mean,
rebar with a wooden stake connected to it.
Yes, that's fine. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not, I don't wanna do rebar every 10 feet, but
No.
yeah,
No.
we can do just some, make sure it's not gonna come down.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have another, Ralph?
Yeah, I have one more request. So number, it's actually not a number, it's your last now therefore be it resolved, on page 6. Expires, this approval expires if building permit is not issued within 6 months. I don't know if any of you know, but the health department has been a little bit of a struggle to get things out of them lately. So I would request a little bit more time. I can submit tomorrow and I probably won't get the permit for the septic in 6 months, to be honest, so.
It is true, I can sense
Yeah,
it.
I've heard it from a lot of people.
Yeah,
So do we have the ability to extend it?
I think we do.
You do.
We do?
So if we do, what do you think is reasonable, 9 months,
A year?
a year?
12?
If you give me a year, that would be great. I mean, I
Okay.
think we should easily,
Okay with a year?
shouldn't be an issue.
I'm okay with
As
12.
long as he's diligently pursuing
Yeah.
some.
Well, if he comes back to ask for an extension, that's when you can ask
Yeah.
if he's diligent.
Okay.
I don't think diligence is getting us very far these days with the Department of Health. On our side. Their side, okay, we can do that. Alright, anything else, anyone? Okay,
that's it for me.
if not, is there a motion then to adopt the resolution as amended?
Motion?
Second,
Second.
all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No, motion's carried, resolution's carried, we're all set.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Good
good
night.
luck, Ralph. Okay, we go to our next item. This is an informal appearance before the board. This is the continued review of Midas Main Street Lot Corp. 90 Inningwood Road. This is an application for a site development plan, steep slopes, tree removal permit, and stormwater management and erosion and sedimentation control. So we last heard this back on January 21.
How about you put it down here? Hang on.
Good evening.
Yeah.
Dave Sessions, KSCJ Consulting. Here on Zoom is William DeVore and Andre Fernandez. Andre is the owner of the property, and Garrett from JZN Engineering is also here on Zoom. Garrett is the structural geotech engineer. Yes, as you mentioned, we were here in January. You know, we were, at that time, we were looking to maybe schedule a public hearing. It was premature. The town had several comments. The last time we were here, I think we had a lot of discussion about the construction access, DOT. We, as you know, we have secured DOT curb cut approval. The construction access, as you know, is proposed to enter down on Inningwood in this location. The main ultimate access to the property will be here. But we had a lot of discussion about the construction access. I think the board was satisfied at that time that we would only use the construction access to gain access to the site to construct the main access. Once that was constructed, or actually even before that was constructed, we would basically close off the construction access permanently. And as part of the DOT's permit, they wanted us to provide a few boulders and some evergreens. I think one of the comments Sabrina had was that we should confirm that DOT was okay with that. As part of their approval, they actually mandated that we do that, so by default, they were okay with that.
And as we understand it, as I think you represented last time, once the equipment gains access, it's going to exit through the other driveway once it's finished. It's not gonna come back down, it's gonna go out through the main entrance.
That is correct. And we, as part of the many comments that were issued by the town engineer, we did provide a detailed phasing plan, laying that.
Would it be the finished driveway, would it, Dave, or just be kind of the rough?
No.
So you get all the heavy equipment out?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of in and out while the house is being built, so it'll be cut in and used, but certainly not finished. So we made a submission 3 or so weeks ago. We did receive comments from the town planner, town wetland consultant, and town engineer. Couple of things that we need to clean up, notes on the plans, some confirmation. We are, I guess, requesting that we, unless we wanna go through it in great detail today, there's a lot of little, nits and ticks that we need to work out, but I don't think anything insurmountable. If the board would allow us to work offline perhaps with Dennis, with the deputy town engineer, and with Sabrina on anything that they might feel is a little larger in scope.
Well, I would say we're not there. I think that would be premature. I mean, speaking for myself, and the board members will speak their own minds on this. I'm still really concerned with this, the extent of the proposed cut. And I'm concerned that it's gonna look like, as I said once before, half jokingly, like an exit ramp coming off the Taconic by the time we finish. And so, my understanding is we have some conflict with your geotech people in terms of what, levels and what kind of slope we're looking at. And I think what would really help us is if we had renderings, drawings, architectural sketches, whatever, of what this cut will look like. I'm talking about the main cut, not the temporary cut. The cut will look like in terms of the finish. Because we're hearing different things in terms of what the DOT wants and this is still a site plan approval before us, it's still a steep slopes approval. Of course, all the road issues are before us. So I don't think I remain very concerned that this is what I would call a classic example why we have a steep slope permit law. It's a cliff that's proposed to be eliminated here. And then we have significant cut going into the house, which is fine because that's internal. But my concern is the what we're looking at coming up Inningwood from the standpoint of site planning. This is gonna be as perhaps, again, we haven't seen the renderings, but basically a gouge, a scar on Inningwood Road. And to the extent that we can avoid that or mitigate that, we really, I personally, I'm not there, we really need to work, I think, on that and look at alternatives. I had some conversations with some of the engineering folks today, and they'll indicate whether or not some of my ideas are conceivable or not, practical or not. But one thing that we really need to do, I think, as a board, is we have to set forth the width dimension that we wanna see this cut to be. And then have the applicant engineer it to that width. And my view is rather than having this giant area wide open, that we maybe have a more narrow opening, they may be coming in and out of a tunnel, essentially a tunnel, but that's their issue, and then step it up with walls. And then, have these step walls and put vegetation on the walls so it's not so harsh and the impact is not so great. We have as a point of reference, and Bob Cioli, you'll have to help me on this again. Which old application was it that this
Crow's Nest?
that reminds us of this? Yeah, Crow's Nest.
It was Crow's Nest off of Route 120 where we put in stone for a 21-foot cut, very similar to this cut. And everyone that drove along 120 wrote letters to the town board. And they actually made the applicant go back in there a year after it was built to refurbish the whole thing to put grass in as opposed to the stone. It was just unsightly and the people did not like to see it, where it could very possibly happen here as well.
I mean, obviously it's a different touch, and you guys are not proposing stone and gravel, so I mean, obviously you have a much better touch on it.
So are you I mean, there are minimum dimensions, right, for the driveway and then the side of the driveway, let's call them the shoulders, and then these guys, I believe, are doing cuts and you were gonna go back at an angle. Are you proposing retaining walls?
Yes.
And then retaining walls that are stepped with plantings on top
Yep.
and then growies hanging down?
Yeah. To get to
Okay.
that.
To narrow
narrow
up
width.
the opening, right? Because
Yeah, to
right now the
narrow the
opening, is it a 2-on-1? You're a 1-on, or 1-on,
It's a 3-on-2.
3-on-2, okay, so it's kinda steep.
It's steep.
And not only is it steep, but also because it's done that way, it goes back.
Well, it has to
It
because
has
of
to,
the
of
V,
course,
yeah.
it has to.
But I think with
If you do
retaining
it that way,
walls,
right.
I mean, if we're talking about aesthetics, and we are, if we're gonna be stepping retaining walls, I don't think you can do this with less than 3 walls per side. I mean, and aesthetics, the higher you go, obviously, the more it's going to look unnatural. By the time you step back 3 walls on one side, 3 walls on the other, I'm almost gonna guess that it's gonna be a wider disturbance swath than what we're proposing. You know,
Well, we should see that and you know, and see what that looks like, because again, just to remind everyone, you know, our environmental laws start out in various stages, and the first stage is avoidance. Now, it's pretty unavoidable here, you know, so we have a problem. And then try to mitigate it to the most practical and possible. And you know, and it's aesthetics as well as, you know, the safety issues and all the things that we really have to consider on this one.
Do you have enough information that you could put a stake at the bottom so we can see where the bottom of the slope is and a stake at the top so we can see the top of the proposed slope? Do you have,
Sure.
is there enough there on site that we can go see that?
well, yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
The one thing that I'll express, and I mean this with all due respect to the board, and I'm speaking on behalf of my client. We've been here for many, many years. That's nobody's fault. We've had several meetings, we've had several review memos from town consultants. We've gone back and forth with the DOT. 2 meetings ago, the board sent us away and said, okay, we get it, now go get your DOT approval. We got our DOT approval for this location because it is the safest location, albeit not perfect. There's nothing perfect along this road, but this is the location that's been determined to be the safest. So we know that we're here. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that my client would say, why wasn't this asked of us 3 years ago?
I'll give you,
Because
let me, that's a good question, because it really ticks me off. Because we have asked many times for your client to provide us with detailed information regarding property rights. We still don't have that. Now, we infer that New York State owns this property because you have a permit, but we asked for title reports years ago, never got them. That would have helped us to understand who owns what, where it goes, and would have sped things up considerably. So we've asked for information and have not provided, and we still don't have some of that information. So again, you know, speaking to council this morning, we're doing a lot of stuff here just on supposing that you have certain rights, supposing that this is the state, but we don't have that hard information. We've asked for it, And we said years ago would be so, we didn't know at the point who owned the property. We didn't know if it was the town property, state property, and we asked for it, just get a title report. That will determine who owns what. Once,
Okay,
nothing.
that's fair. It's news to me. I didn't realize that you were still owed
Yeah.
ownership information.
So again,
I'm assuming that
we're
we-
working with you, but we're sort of guessing that you in fact have these rights. And we're seeing that you're getting the permits, and we're guessing, actually, Sabrina raised this issue earlier. We really don't have anything that says about the temporary cut that's actually clearly and definitively part of the permit. It's implied because they say put the boulders back in, so we're with you and say, that it sure looks like it's part of it.
I mean,
And it sure looks like it's the state because it must be the state's property because they're giving you a permit.
It is.
But
And there- and there are
frankly, we don't
attorneys-
have a title report that says, by the way, this is the state's property. We have
Okay.
an easement.
I
and a
hopefully, I mean, William's on, I think Andre's on, hopefully they can address that either now or William, yes, now or later?
Yeah, well, hello board, how are you tonight? I've been listening to you guys' conversation, and I just want to reach out to you that, we had addressed, the entrances in different types of tiered walls, landscaping in the front, and we went back and forth with all different types of looks but to all of the different design plans that we introduced, when the plans went to New York State, which is their land that the rock is being cut from, they have the jurisdiction that they don't want anything in that right of way except what is naturally there. So the only thing they want disturbed is the actual rock that's being cut. That's it. Nothing else is to be added in New York State land except for the cut of the rock. That's it.
But that is actually true. They didn't even want the landscaping.
Is that in the permit? Is it in the actual permit?
Everything was removed in the plan that was previously submitted to the planning board. All landscaping was removed, tiered walls that were shown at one time was removed. As you can now see, the only thing that DOT will approve is just the actual natural cut of the rock. Because New York State does not want to have the liability on their land if the landscaping is not maintained or retaining walls are introduced or this or that. They just want what is naturally there and just have the rock cut. That's all they will allow in New York State right of ways, not just this parcel, but in all of their parcels.
But again, we don't have a copy of the actual permit, do we, John?
Right, we have
permit?
what they approved.
Right.
We don't have the determinations that went into it.
Right.
And the other thing is we still have jurisdiction over our site plan.
Yes.
It's New York State land that we have the right to cut through. It's our right of way, it's in our deeds, it's in our title rights, which we'll get to you. I wasn't aware that you wanted this, and we will provide that to you. But as I'm gonna state again, New York State does not want anything in their right of way, just the rock being cut naturally.
Okay,
Yeah, I didn't mean any offense.
Yeah, no, of
you know,
course not.
It's just, we were,
I appreciate, and board members are probably new to this project. This project has been around for many years. And I guess the issue with regard to the various renderings that we saw before there was a permit, sort of, null and void. It doesn't matter because you have a permit. Now we have to work with the permit. Just like you finally have Board of Health. So we know that's been proven out. But the issue, it seems to us, is still that we still have to work on this in terms of getting something that is consistent with what we do here as a town for the site planning, as well as on the steep slopes. Again, I think we asked last time around if you could get things staked out, because it's very, very important, I think, for board members to get to the site and see it. You really have to see it because the applicant really has some very severe challenges here and some tough constraints. And it is a building lot. So they have to figure out some way that there's access that works. So
Now, we can certainly stake it out, we'll stake out, as Greg had mentioned, we'll stake out the entrance, where it's coming in the front. Do you also want everything staked up on top, house, driveway?
I think in advance of that, if you could give us renderings of what it would look like as currently proposed and as you represent currently approved by New York State and what that means. I think there was something mentioned that the state wanted it basically cleared. Nothing in there. I think that was basically big swells going up.
Yeah,
And again, we've had some experience with the state whereby it doesn't have to be cleared like that if we can set up an agreement that's acceptable to the state for maintenance of something that's more reasonable. We've done that before, we have state roads all throughout town.
and Sabrina was kind enough to get us that information from past projects, so yeah. we're on
It
board.
can be done, again, to avoid this clear cut swale appearance, again, like it's exit 21 off the Taconic.
Also, if I may, as per our last board meeting, you were directed for us to receive a sightline maintenance and get that taken care of, which we've done, and we have a permit in place for the sightline maintenance. Also, we have an approved draft agreement which is ready to be filed with the Westchester County records that has been accepted by your attorney. On behalf of our attorney, Cuddy and Federer, we're working together to put the agreement together. So that is also all in place for the sightline maintenance. The sightline maintenance permit is to stay in place in perpetuity, and is also transferable if the owners ever would decide to sell their home to the next homeowner.
I haven't seen any of those things.
So those were submitted on our documents, when we submitted our submissions and our plans.
William, I'm sorry, board, the counsel for the planning board is saying that he has not seen any of those documents.
Well, I'm just explaining to you that those were submitted, they should have been submitted within our submission, Dave.
Yeah.
Okay, whether submitted or not, clearly they have not been accepted or approved. So they're still subject to review.
I haven't spoken to Cuddy and Federer
Okay.
about this application.
We by all means can resubmit that they were formally submitted, I can resubmit the permit, the sightline maintenance permit, along with the agreement that's been accepted by the town of Newcastle's attorney.
Not a sightline. So, Sabrina,
Well, nothing's been accepted by the
Yeah.
town
you
council.
submitted a declaration.
Let me just be clear about that.
We have a New York State maintenance, we've agreed to maintain it.
Yeah.
I'm on a road, I have to maintain my frontage. So there's a document that's been reviewed and approved by our council that it sounds like you may have given it to them already. If not, that's a simple thing.
Yeah, you have.
I gave it to them a while back.
So that was not submitted, if that's acceptable to our council, right? That solves at least one
The
issue.
agreement was acceptable with the attorney, Cuddy and Federer worked with the attorney at the town of Newcastle, went back and forth, and they put together an agreement that was acceptable.
Sir, with all due respect, the attorney's sitting here saying he hasn't spoken to Cuddy and Federer. So,
Well, there would have correspondence, I'm not sure which attorney, the town of Newcastle that Cuddy and Federer was working with, but
Well, they're kind of all present here tonight.
well,
The other-
that's great, I mean,
Could have been
just so we're clear, the other council sitting in the.
Do we know when this took
Well,
place?
Yeah.
I'm not making this up, we also have a sightline permit from DLT. I had turned in to Dave, the draft agreement, which was, I was advised that was accepted, from, Cuddy and Federer.
What we'll do is we will repackage everything and get it into you all tomorrow or the next day.
And again, emphasize this, you have your approvals and permits from New York DOT, that's terrific. you wouldn't be here if you didn't need approvals from us for steep slopes, if you didn't need a site plan approval, you wouldn't be here. So you need those, and this is part of our process. And even though you have those permits, that doesn't grant you the access at this point, and what we're saying is we have a duty under our law to interpret this and work with our law and to work with you and to work with the DOT to come up with the best possible solution. My suggestion is that for me, at this point, just me, I don't think we're there in terms of the best possible solution that mitigates the challenges and the problems that you guys have to resolve here to the greatest extent possible within reason. And what I've asked for is, if you guys can send us some renderings so we can get a feel, also when we go out in the field, to see what it's gonna look like afterwards. It's one thing for some of us are better with the lines and the maps, but some of us really just need to see what the renderings, what this really will look like, with alternatives. You've got obviously an alternative right now, this is your proposal. What will it look like? What's the impact? My understanding, and you'll hear from Bob on this, is that there was some inconsistency even with your geotech person in terms of what slope might be the slope that we'll end up with. And as that slope changes, the cutback on the swell may change. And again, one suggestion was maybe the way to do this is to limit the width of the cut to something reasonable. And then you guys, resolve meet the challenge. It's obviously, it's not going to take away your permit that you have from the DOT. This is where the location will be.
Well, it could actually require a modification to it. So it was kind of cart before the horse situation.
But I think
you sent us a way to get the permit, we got the permit, and now we might be changing it.
I think our changes may go to make it a smaller opening, not a bigger opening.
And I
So
think-
that would be that would be still within, right?
Yeah, but if you think about, and I appreciate that, from a square footage disturbance standpoint, I appreciate that. From a visual and an aesthetic standpoint, I think you might have more visual relief with a more battered look as opposed to a real vertical tunnel. That's getting even more unnatural.
Yeah, I'm not saying vertical.
It's
I'm wondering if we can reduce the bottom, the dimension that's on grade, that springs up. If there's any,
No, I mean, you've got we're not that generous with the width
Yeah, I was
opening.
looking at the drawings
We're as
now.
narrow as we can be.
you're not super wide.
No,
The
we're
driveway's
not.
only 12,
We're as
so we're not
narrow as
skinnying that up any,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we're as narrow as we can be.
And your swale's only a few feet on each side, so.
Yeah, and as William mentioned,
Do you know what the
DOT
do you know what your tops are? If you were to run a dimension across your two tops, what do you think, like 30 feet?
The edge of disturbance is
Yeah, like at the top of your little slope.
it's probably somewhere between 50 and 60 feet.
Okay, between the
And
two tops.
disturbance to disturbance.
Yeah, right, so then you could,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I was wondering if these could get tightened, but you're right, it's gonna start to do this.
Then it's gonna be a real tunnel.
Right.
Yeah.
If I may also to interrupt the board and Dave, and I know we have Robert Cioli here, which has brought the geo attention to the board and to the town of Newcastle. We brought in JZ, as per your request, to do some rock analysis and to review the rock. And we had found out that there was actually a New York State code requirement that requires the rock to be cut at a certain angle within New York State right of way. So has to respect the cuts that New York State provides when you cut into the rock that's in the New York State right of way. And those plans, the geo plans, which I just found out today after meeting with JZN and Kellogg Sessions, that the actual opening of that we had proposed, which was like 35 feet, now has to go to 50 feet in order to satisfy New York State DOT code requirements on how to cut back their rock within their land. So we have to go back and redesign the civil plan in order to make the rock work that New York State requires how the rock is to be cut within their land. If JZN is present, he could probably speak on that more than I would, as he is the geo engineer. And it goes by state code where the rock is on the state land. So the market got a little bit wider now.
So to our point, that's another rendering that we have to see in terms of what's going on here, in terms of what this is gonna look like. And I think, you know, I don't know this stuff at all, it's up to you guys, but you know, there are ways of pinning this stuff and perhaps where you don't have to open it quite as wide, but we leave that to the engineers, they'll determine that stuff, they'll know what that is all about. So anyway. I interrupted you, Dave, a long time ago. Did you have other things to say?
Probably, but the memory's not what it is.
I think you're proposing that we would just basically go back to staff and let staff, you know, work out with your guys,
Well,
your
there's a
team.
lot of low-hanging fruit in the memos that we can
Yes.
address very quickly, and we're obviously just trying
Right.
to check all the boxes here.
Right.
If it comes down to a matter of aesthetics with the opening, with the driveway, okay, that it is what it is, but we would like to chip away at all of the other issues. I mean, obviously, there's some comments about the stormwater pollution prevention plan, and you know, we can work that out.
Right.
These are just numbers and things of that nature. I don't think Sabrina had anything in Sabrina's memo that was earth-shattering. Again, we can work it out. Dennis, the trees, some notes, I think we can work pretty much everything else out. The main focus here was the geotech situation. So your board, obviously you would have to poll the board, but you're not at a point now where we could schedule a public hearing?
Personally, I would support it. I think first of all, we need to get out there and see the site. I think we need to see these renderings. And then also, I will hear from Bob Cioli then in terms of his memo, because he's got a lot more meat in his memo regarding, you know, sightlines and where we are on those and where we are on the cuts and where we are on stormwater, et cetera. So I guess we have a couple of memos here. One is from our assistant civil engineer as well as from Bob Cioli. But my understanding is that the stormwater looks pretty darn good and you've got some things covered really well with the culverts, et cetera, and the access. So and we've got some information, so I don't wanna speak anymore, I really should leave it to Bob and let us fill us in. So you're up, Bob.
Oh, okay. Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Yes, thank you, guys. The stormwater comments I have given to Miguel, due to the extent of work I had to look at as well. He did a very good job on this. But I guess one of the biggest items is the stormwater plan should be based upon the newest stormwater design manual for 2024. There's several items on here that it was not designed for. One of the items which would probably increase the volumes is item 7 on the report that Miguel did. The new code requires the engineers to come up with a site-specific storm event which is based on IDF curves, as opposed to using a generic type 3 storm they used to use in the old code. So this is probably gonna give you a little bit more volume, so that was number 7. They have a nice outline how to do it in the appendix based on section 4.9 of the 2024 manual. So that's a big item right there. A lot of the other ones are pretty much just technical items. 10 has to do with the new manual as well, with the separation distances, as you know, just for the board's information. They did grant a little bit of relief on the new code. Before it used to be 3 feet from the bottom of the Coltex to the groundwater or rock. They bumped it down to 2 feet. So that they gave them a 1 foot relief. That's number 10. Number 12 is a pretty good size item because you can only use the isolator rows, just for the board's information. The isolator rows are used to pre-treat, but they cannot be used for the volume control of the quantity. So just make certain whatever the isolator rows are, if you're using 2 of them, you have to add that to the volume of the Coltex, number 12. Number 14, emergency overflow should be stabilized outlets, should be provided for the infiltrators as well. The other items are technical items, not big items, but it should be done nonetheless. Then I have my memo I did, which looked at the civil site, geotech, sightlines, construction sequencing. I'm just gonna go over the big items here. I guess one of the biggest things I have is I looked at each section that was shown on the JZN plans, and there seemed to be a discrepancy between the actual limits of clearing that were shown on the plans by your company, Dave.
Yeah.
For instance, cross-section A, when I physically measured the dimensions from top to top of the cut, it's 50 feet. However, on your site plan, it only shows 35 feet.
Yeah.
So, that's gonna affect the visuality, the aesthetics, not only that, it's gonna affect possibly how many more trees have to come down and the clearing and grading of the line as well. That applies to cross-section B, which was done by the roadway, and cross-section E, which was done by the back. So those have to be addressed, I think you kind of mentioned this before, but that's critical, you change that. And it's a shame, just my opinion of this whole thing, that the DOT doesn't allow any type of retaining walls along the cut, because that would be able to utilize the screening, so it's a shame they don't offer that or allow that in any way, shape, or form. Mr. Chairman, we looked at the MBT plan, I think they did a pretty commendable job. I was concerned with that access road for construction, but after you look at the sequencing, it's not gonna be open that long, really. And they did have enough, they have 2 flaggers out there on Inwood, so police chief looked at it, Commissioner Public looks at it, Public Works looked at it, Jeff looked at it, we're all good with it.
Yep.
So that's acceptable. The MPT plan, there were some notes that you should put on the sequencing plan. I think we'll did a pretty good job of that, but I like wrote my plan on what is this, MPT 3. I recommended some additional notes you should put on those phasing plans. As far as general comments, it's discussion with Park Carey, we just have some additional notes to put on the waterway. Just so the board knows, there's 2 transmission lines going up that road, and one of the head walls and culvert's gonna be quite close, we really don't know the distance. So we're gonna require them to do deeps and perks and deep test holes to find out where that water main is, because Park Carey wants to see the minimum separation distance from the outside of the pipe to the outside of the culvert where they're putting it in, at least 3 feet, so that's a big item, that's gonna be done sooner than later. So they requested to do it during construction, Bart was amenable to that, so there are some notes we do have there, 1, 2, and 3. Any other items, they submitted a site estimate, they were up to like 800 or 1,000. But I would wait till you review the plans that Miguel did. It might increase a little bit, plus I would recommend that you put in a line item for the as-built survey, engineering certifications, and driveway line. Also too, whenever you come before the planning board, I usually bump it up 1 year. It's already midway, almost 2025, this is probably gonna go into 2026. So the cost should be reflected with inflation, which is 4%, and multiplied by a factor of 1.04, so that might be going up to 950,000, so. Those are my main comments for tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Sabrina, were there any comments that you wanted to highlight out of your memo?
Not at
I
this
don't wanna cut you
time.
off short, okay.
No, it's okay. I think that, as David said, they're not that not that extensive. I think the biggest one on this time around is to separate the coverage calculations, separate your stairs from patios and porches.
Yep.
And include the retaining wall.
Yeah, no, we saw that, that's,
Yeah.
we can clean that up.
Okay, Dennis, were there any comments that you wanted to highlight out of your memo?
Just the one, but I think we're all in the same area, obviously, we're gonna be doing the rock cut, as you saw the photos from that report from the engineer, but there's obviously probably some trees that are gonna qualify to be included, in replacement calculations, so they need to be added to the plan.
Do we have any idea, I mean, reasonably, what each extension of the swale might mean in terms of additional trees being cut or being saved, vice versa?
Right, so I mean, you know, from the photos, which kind of makes sense, I mean, you have a lot of small diameter regrowth that I'm not even sure is gonna make it to 4 inches
Right.
Of diameter. But having said that, I'm just curious, I think you're gonna get at least one. So I just, you know, wanna see like what that distribution at the end of the day would be, so that's all.
Okay, good. Good. Questions from board members?
Is there gonna be any crushing on site of this rock?
William?
No, that I'm aware of, Andre's not looking to crush any rock on site.
So it'd be amenable that no crushing on the site?
No crushing machine's gonna go up there to crush rock.
Okay. Anyone else anything? How soon can you have things staked out so that we can get a site visit?
Chairman, we've already staked out the site and we've had several people from the town of Newcastle walk the site with me already.
Are they still up, William, all the stakes?
Well, no, and I haven't been out there since we all walked it together. I mean, I presume that the stakes are still there. We did an extensive stakeout of everything. The road, where the cut would be, where the house would be, where the stormwater drain systems would be. We did a thorough stakeout
Okay,
for the town of Newcastle.
so maybe we can just, in the next few days, we can go out there and verify that everything is still in order. And then we can contact the town and let them know that you're good to go.
Because we have a lot of new members on the planning board who were not here.
I think you're the only person who's seen it, right?
Yep.
When were you thinking about?
We could probably get out as we, you know, can meet, but probably what we normally do is like a Saturday morning to get out and see a site. So in a week or two, I mean, avoiding Mother's Day and all those fun things, but other than that, maybe a Saturday in a week or two, if that works with you guys.
They're good, William?
Yeah, William's right, I mean, this has been seen, I mean, I've walked it several times with when it was staked out a couple of years ago. But I don't know if those stakes are still there, if they're still relevant. I'm sure you've restaked it, I mean, I guess you must have restaked it for Dennis and
I would, Mr. Chairman, due to the Memorial Day holiday and everything, I would say go to Saturday the 7th of June.
okay. So everyone look at your calendar, see if that works.
I'm at Getney every Saturday for baseball, so just let me know when to show.
Okay. Okay, so we'll target the June 7th if that works for everyone.
Okay.
You can always go privately.
Oh, okay.
I mean, Tom did that a couple times.
Oh, okay, then I'll do that,
Yeah.
yeah, because I do soccer from
Yeah.
8 to 1 every Saturday.
Yeah, I understand.
And if we had to and everybody is okay with it, can we set up maybe a staff meeting or two to iron out certain things that we might have questions on or obviously offline with staff, is that
Yeah.
board is okay with that, and Sabrina?
Yeah, I think we're okay with that. I mean, that always helps us because it moves us closer to resolution.
Helps us as well.
Yep.
And public hearing,
I don't think we're set yet, but let's go another informal and then see if we can't schedule the public and get you moving.
alright, so we will revise the plans, we'll catch any low-hanging fruit as we can, certain issues where we might have to hold off on, we need some renderings.
Yes.
I understand that, so the next submission will be, when is the,
The next submission deadline is May 12th for the June 3rd meeting.
does that make sense, because you're not walking the site till
Yeah, I
June
would
seventh?
do it after.
So do you wanna do it for, we don't have a second meeting in June.
So do you wanna try to walk
Don't
the
we have
site
one for the
before
tax day?
We have one
We
right
just
now.
do it on Wednesday?
You wanna try to walk it before
So
June
July
7th?
1st meeting, and there's a June 9th submission deadline,
What is it, July meeting?
July 1st.
Is it possible to walk the site before the June date?
I think we could try it.
This way maybe we can get on the June
June 3.
third meeting.
Yeah. Because it really pushes you way back into July. Does it seem,
I can
do
do
we
it.
have other possible dates, Sabrina, that you have on your calendar?
The 31st is, you know, it's up to you
Memorial Day
guys,
weekend?
it's a Memorial Day weekend, the
No,
20th.
that's the weekend before is Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah.
The 31st
Oh, yes,
is
the
not.
24th, the 31st, the 24th, the 17th. Unless you wanna get out there and give them the 10th.
Oh, we're fine with anything.
Why don't we try for the 17th? We get out there sooner and then have that information.
17th of May?
Yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, I will not be here, next week, I will be out of town. I won't be back until the following week.
Well, that's okay, the 17th is the following week, isn't it?
Yeah,
You
I
just,
think so.
Today's the 6th.
I will be out of town next week, and I will not be back until the following week.
But the 17th is the following week, I think, William.
Okay, but you refer, that's a weekend, right, Saturday or Sunday?
Saturday.
Yes, that's the end of his week away.
Yeah, I won't be back until Monday.
Well, I would, I mean, we'd love to have you out there, but is it worth kicking this can down the road another month? You know,
It's actually 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
I mean, I can have it's been staked out, I can go double check, the stake,
sure.
we should go on place, let
Let's
everybody
do it.
know, I mean, why you need to be there?
Yeah,
No, I mean, we'd love for you to be there, but it's not worth losing a month and a half if you're not.
I mean, we had submitted a stake plan, to the town, which I still have available, we can resubmit the stake plan.
that would be great, yeah. That would be very
Somebody will
helpful.
be out there, William, somebody from my office at a minimum, unless you'd rather.
Okay.
No, that's fine.
No, I think we just.
Okay.
Oh, that would be great then, that would be great, I will, get the stakes ready, and then for I guess the 17th it is?
The site walk, yes.
It has to be Kellard, nobody else.
And okay.
And Dave, I'll resubmit the state plans, I'll be submitted to you, so that they have, the town has another updated plan.
Good, and May 12th for a June 3rd meeting. May 12th is 6 days from now. I just realized that. That's pretty soon.
And you got Mother's Day in
Get
the middle.
working, Dave.
I won't have a rendering ready in that time
Yeah.
period, sorry, that's way too
All right,
soon to
you
try
know
to
what?
put one.
That's on us, so we won't take up any more of your time. If we don't make the May 12th, then
Yeah,
we
okay.
have to do what
But
we
we'll
have to
still
do.
plan on the May 17th, so we will have
Yes.
been out there. We will have the state plan and we've had a chance to go out there and see it,
Okay,
which
great.
I think is really critically important at this point.
Yep, okay.
Good, terrific.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. I have an agenda here.
School district.
The school next.
Yep, there it is. So our next item is a request for an extension of time on the Chappaqua Central School District. This is an application for a preliminary subdivision plat, steep slope permit, tree removal permit, and stormwater pollution prevention plan approval, Button Hook Road, Sabina Road. We last extended this on November 6, 2024. The current 6-month extension is up or coming up. I don't think there are any objections from staff in connection with this extension. We understand that there's litigation and that's what the holdup has been. It's actually refreshing to hear that it's not the New York DEP that's holding it up, it's just lawyers. So, not hearing any objections, is there
I
a?
just have a question.
Oh, sure.
This was originally approved in 19, it's 6 years. Can this just keep getting extension, or is there a time where
No.
finally someone says enough is enough?
No,
Okay,
they took away that provision,
okay.
but you can keep on going.
Who's they?
New York State,
New York State, gotcha. Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
So no, I have no more comments.
Okay. Is there a motion to grant the extension requested?
Motion?
All in favor? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. We have minutes from the April 1 meeting. Any questions, objections, changes to the minutes of April 1? If not, is there a motion to adopt the minutes of April 1?
Motion?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion is approved and the minutes are adopted. So we now go to an educational session.
Was there anything we could do about this? This was in our packet. This was for the Armonk Road.
It was just because it was given to you, so I just put it there for you guys to read and
Done.
Enjoy.
enjoy.
Our next item is a discussion item. This is on the Newcastle Town Code MFR-C regulations. So Sabrina is going to fill us in on the latest on this. My understanding is that the history on this was the result of the famous Berenson case back in the late 70s. And as a result, the town put together a multifamily legislation, which was back then all lots fit into the one size. It was just across the board. Of course, it's been amended over the years with various changes. And perhaps to the extent that now it's confusing because of these amendments and perhaps some inconsistencies, et cetera. So Sabrina, why don't you take it from here?
Sure, so the town board has asked that the planning board wrestle with the MFRC zoning code. I had prepared a memo for you dated April 30th that went through the history of the creation of this zoning district, which, as the chairman said, stemmed from the Berenson versus Newcastle decision. They wanted us to introduce multifamily zones into our single-family zoning code. So over time, there have been 6 amendments to this code. Some are more substantive than others, word changes, things of that nature, coverage, things of that nature.
I have a quick question, sorry.
Yes,
I'll raise my hand for the future.
it's okay.
Is there a district, or is this really, as it currently exists, is this really just a town-wide?
It's not a
Zone?
town-wide. This zone applies to the business retail zone and the business retail parking zone. So it can apply to properties within those zoning districts that are in existence within the Chappaqua Hamlet and the Millwood Hamlet.
So it does not apply, for example, like just out in the middle of,
No.
the town, somewhere where in an
It
R2A
does
zone?
not, it does not apply to residentially zoned land, which
Okay.
is
Mhm.
93%
Good.
of the town,
Just wanted to,
okay? Yeah,
make
so
sure we all
so-
understood that.
yeah, no, so in the code, there are 3 different sections in the code that reference the MFRC. There's the actual, and here it is in the code in hard copy, I don't know if any of you have seen this, this is the original code. These 3 tabs are 3 different locations where this code is referenced. It's referenced in the actual discussion of the ordinance. It's referenced in what we call a schedule of regulations, which consists of tables. There's 2 different tables that it's referenced in. And it's questionable whether or not those 3 things relate to each other through circular referencing in the code. So historically, there have been 2 properties that have been designated multifamily residential in the Chappaqua Hamlet. They're known as 149 King Street and Chappaqua Commons. So pre-existed before I became your director of planning. Since my tenure in director of planning, we have not had a successful application apply through the MFRC. We had one back in 2015-ish, yes.
Have we not had a successful one because nobody's tried it, or somebody's tried it, it's been so difficult they gave up?
Somebody tried it and it was difficult.
Okay.
It did not come to fruition. At that time, there was an interpretation of the code and we went with it. Most recently, I'd say within the past 6 to 8 months, I've been approached by a bunch of property owners, different applications, wanting to apply this code. Each one of their professionals, their architect or their engineer has come up with a different way of interpreting this code. In addition, in my review, trying to assist them with trying to figure out whether or not they had an application, I identified some inconsistencies in the code. And I highlighted them in my memo on page 2. No page number here, so sorry about that. Where the first bullet, identification that in some instances the entire area of a lot will not be utilized in determining basic permitted density. Within the code, and I provided the actual the language of the code for your review. The code gives specific sizes for units. You have to take that size of units and match it up with your property size to come up with a basic permitted density. Many times, there's area of that lot that doesn't fit, right? You don't have the exact amount of lot area that equates to the apartment sizes. So it is unclear when you have an incentive, if you're taking advantage of an incentive, are you going back and recalculating your density utilizing your lot? Or are you doing it based on your density? I'm just gonna go through them, we can talk about it after, this is just for your edification. There's also the clarification that the percentage increase for various incentives. Now, there's an incentive for AFFH, there's an incentive for putting your parking underground, there's an incentive for making your apartments rental apartments, there's incentives for creating ADA apartments, and there's incentives for restricting them for senior use. There are also other incentives, community benefit, increased setbacks, other improvements that the planning board may deem worth giving incentive over. So the percentage increase, there's no direct obvious way to calculate that increase based on your maximum permitted density or your basic permitted density.
And that increase is always square footage, right?
Yes.
It's never height, it's never anything else, it's just always square footage.
Within the MFRC can be placed within the BR and the BRP zoning districts. The applicant must adhere to current height, which is 35 feet.
Right, 3-story, 35.
Yep, 2 or 3 or 35. You have to meet the parking requirement as per the code, and you have to meet stormwater requirements of the code.
Gotcha.
There's nothing that this board has control over to change any of those things through the MFRC designation. The only thing that you have the ability to assess is the density on the property. Another area of conflict within the code comes to coverage. Within the BR and the BRP, there are no coverage requirements. Within the MFRC, there are coverage requirements in the actual written section of the code, but in the attached table, the 6410B3, it says NA, not applicable. So there's a conflict there. There's another conflict that I did not.
Just a second, and those coverage differences are very substantial, aren't they?
Correct.
I mean, it's like 20 points versus 100%.
Right, we require a 20% building or to be within 20% of a building coverage, and your development coverage is 35%. So you can't
And that
go
was the
over
comment, why would you do the MFRP? Because it
MFRC.
MFRC, because it kind of hurts you if you take that angle.
Again, this is what's in the code,
Right.
right? And so when somebody comes to me, I have to dissect this code and figure out how it's working. There's too much guesswork for me to feel comfortable with. So I brought it to the town board, and they would like your board to help hash it out and give them a recommendation as to what you think it should be.
And yet, Sabrina, as I understand it, if someone came in with an application that was a so-called standard mixed use, commercial first floor, and then residential second or third floor, many of these regulations don't apply.
You would not apply the MFRC.
Right,
They
so
would be
basically the coverage is
consistent with the
very
BR and the
different.
BRP zone.
Exactly.
And the difference is that the BR and the BRP zone require first floor commercial use. You can have living above the store, but you
Yeah.
have to have first floor commercial use. The MFRC, there's a table, 6410B2, which has a list of uses. And it has the MFRC use listed as number 12. And then it references the actual code section of 6010, right? It doesn't go back to the table, so there's no circular relationship between those. So I had one potential property owner say to me, I don't have to look at the table because it's telling me to go to the code. So again, there's a disconnect, I believe, or I need somebody to help me define the direction to go in. In the MFRC table, it says you need a 50-foot front yard setback. If you look at the hamlet and where the street wall is, it's not 50-foot setback.
You gotta destroy the street wall 50 feet.
Correct. So again, if we're gonna make them all connect, we need to make them make sense. If we're gonna not make them connect, we need to make sure we're defining what we want to define in relation to what the MFRC stands for. And the MFRC code is consistent with the comprehensive plan, which is consistent with the legislative decision that said we had to do this, right? So one of the other areas that while we're deliberating, your board is deliberating the zoning code, are the incentives, the percentages, maximums or minimums or percentage of incentive that is given, is it reflective to what should be reflected? Do you want the mix of housing types for senior, for AFFH, designed for ADA? Do you want a mix of that? Or do you want to allow an applicant to increase their density just based on, to the maximum extent practicable, based on parking underneath and rentals? The code as it's written right now does not allow an applicant to exceed 100% of the density. So if your basic permitted density is 2 units, you can't put in 3 units, additional units, for a total of 5. The most you can develop is 4 units.
So it's based on number of units, not on square footage?
Well,
Maybe.
the applicant, exactly.
Like
I
I
mean,
love
but
this
it- but
stuff
it
because
can
I've
be.
driven back trucks through ambiguity, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking from my perspective,
Well, we could turn it, if you can only develop, you know, what is a,
well, it's
we'll
like
give you the
one,
math.
yeah, but like 1 bedroom, 2 bed, you know, there's all
Yeah, you
kinds
can
of.
Yes, but and then how, so
But
if
that,
it's,
I mean, but the problem with that is that what the market is asking for, right? Are these guys gonna go try to sandwich in units just to fit a code, and then when they go to market it, there's not a market for that?
I think it should be square footage,
Yeah.
right? You know, if you're allowed, and this is my view, if you're allowed 1,000 square feet, the bonus is, if we say 100%, 1,000 square feet.
Yeah.
You could take that 1,000 square feet, put 2 studios on the ground floor and 1 or 2 bedroom on the second
Right.
floor. You know, that's the owner's prerogative, but
I mean, you had said, what do we want? What's the goal, right? I
that's the
mean,
issue.
if you go back to the comp plan, and I remember several things in the comp plan, and one of the main things was to try to get diverse housing throughout the entire town, specifically in the hamlets.
well, it was diversity of housing where we had the infrastructure to
Infrastructure,
support them.
which was specifically the hamlets.
Correct.
So I mean, I think, you know, it seems like the goal of the town is to try to do, I mean, I'm just saying, this is me.
Goal of the comprehensive
The goal of
plan.
the comprehensive plan was to get as much of that housing as possible in the urban areas where we had the infrastructure. So I think the codes, and I think maybe the town even tried to do this years ago with the form-based code, was tried to make the code follow the comp plan a little bit more. Here looks like an opportunity for us to take the code, clean it up, let it work better with the comp plan, and let it try to get to the long-term goals that the town set up to try to get more housing in the community. And it seems like if developers want to do it, we should be trying to work with them within reason, that we're not detrimental to the neighbors, et cetera.
Well, I leave the developers, that's a separate issue, I think, in the equation, but I think the issue is really one of policy, and that is this thing is a mess because it has been changed over the years and it's just the history of it. And we have an opportunity now, it seems to me, for the town board to articulate what the policy of the town should be. And rather than, in my opinion, trying to tweak and change the equations and the 2%, the 1%, this kind of stuff, we have an opportunity to say, why don't we make it clear, what is it that the town wants to see consistent with a plan? I think it's still consistent with that plan. And then the other issue I think that we have here is, I think there are differences in, certainly in the Chappaqua hamlet, in terms of the Greeley area versus the King Street area. The King Street area has got a different feel. I'm sorry, there's not ever going to be much in the way of commercial development in terms of retail, et cetera, on that hill.
On the hill?
It's such a constraint, it's never gonna work.
Agreed.
So why are we constraining these people then, have to have commercial there or these other rules and regulations in order to put housing there if the town wants housing? So it's an opportunity, it seems to me, that you have your density down on Greeley with your commercial downstairs, your residential upstairs, that makes great sense. No setbacks, that's consistent from the roads.
There's a 10-foot setback,
Yeah, exactly, so I'm sorry.
just let's be specific.
Someone told me it was gonna be 0. No, it's not gonna be 0. But in any event,
We could discuss it.
well, I don't think the town board's gonna do 10, 0. It's up to them. But it seems to me this is a really good opportunity to weigh in with the, give some thoughts to the town board, but the town board's gotta make some policy decisions, and I think then we can clean this thing up. And I think, frankly, I can't really speak as well to the Millwood hamlet in terms of different feels. I mean, we have around Station, we have the housing that actually, that was a successful application years ago. And but it seems to me that different rules and regulations might apply to King Street as opposed to downtown Greeley. And I think rather than this one size fits all, I think we should be cognizant of that and treat it differently.
Well,
But that's a town board.
I don't know, that is taking it out of the realm of
Oh, I
what the
understand.
town board has asked you to do.
So we have a meeting with them next week?
No,
Well,
there is no joint meeting at this point. They have asked for you to take this and workshop it to come up with recommendations to fix the MFRC or to clarify.
Yeah, I'll clarify that. So Lena Shreda, town attorney and chairman, members of the board, nice to be here tonight. I thought I would get a night off for town board, but I'm glad to be here anyway. But to echo what Sabrina was saying, yes, this is really, Sabrina had asked me to look at this code provision, and again, which has been in your code since the 70s and has been, several amendments because of the Barrington case. And when I first looked at it, because I also do development work and have been a land use attorney for a long time, there was some confusion in looking at the metrics of it, because in some instances, like Sabrina indicated, the actual chart was different than the text in the code, right? So again, to Jeffrey's point, ambiguity, you made a living of, going through ambiguity. Same thing with me, you want, as a town attorney, as a town, you wanna make sure your zoning code, is pretty much tight, because then guys like me sometimes who have to sue municipalities, you when it's an ambiguity, generally that ambiguity gets construed against us as a municipality and is in favor of the applicant. So for things like that, we wanna see that cleaned up. I did have a question though, the MFRC applies to properties that are 1 acre or more, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, it depends on how you interpret it,
Right.
because
Because it's in a footnote, right?
Well, it
Kinda.
it is in one
Excuse me,
table, it's
I
in one table, and then there's another table that has a reference directly to the code that doesn't talk about 1 acre.
So to my point, that's something that, again, we're looking at for guidance from your board, again, to look at the statute, Sabrina did a memo, look at it and give us some feedback, from the town board, just in terms of the metrics, in terms of, cleaning this up in terms of that code provision, because it's been a while. And I guess also, there was also some discussion about projects that have utilized this provision. I guess the last time it was done was what, like 2012 or 20, when the last time it was utilized?
There are
For free,
two
yeah.
projects, I think I cited them. Hang on. I'm not sure. They
It's not recent.
were prior to those projects were implemented prior to 2012, right? Cause it was before me. You
And
know,
then you mentioned one in
And there
2016 that never got developed.
there was one in 2015 or 2016 that actually came before the planning board and they were trying to utilize the incentives. That application never continued, right? So we didn't finish analyzing.
which one it was?
Yeah, I think I remember it was over on the right-hand side of King Street, and I think
133 King,
I
maybe.
think it, yeah, and I think, I can't recall, I think stormwater was a real challenge there.
Stormwater was a real challenge.
I mean, it seems to me
And we
that,
didn't dig in deep, I didn't dig in deep to the inconsistencies, it was one applicant.
so, I mean, that is one of the issues for the Chappaqua Hamlet, that's for sure. Stormwater is a huge constraint, a huge challenge. So, you know, it seems to me that that's one of the fundamental policies, we don't wanna flood the people downstream from a development.
And
And we-
Millwood, it's
we-
gonna
we
be
have-
sanitary.
Yeah,
Millwood's all
We
sanitary.
have done extensive, we've required applicants, and Bob Seely's on there still. We have required applicants to do the downstream analysis,
oh yeah.
right? And we did extensive analysis when we did our Hamlet Improvement Project, when we improved the stormwater, when we did the sidewalks, when we did all of those improvements, we did a lot of analysis.
Yep.
Right, so we have a good sense of what the system can take, and they unfortunately have to retain this on their sites.
Yeah, and it's one thing on Greeley, but it's another thing on King Street.
King.
I mean, I don't know how you do it. I mean,
Well,
the engineers say they can do it, but
Engineers say they can, they have a solution for everything.
it's other people's money, so they say you can do it, right?
Yeah. You know, again, there are challenges that a property owner and a development team have to overcome. Stormwater and parking are the two that set them back always, no matter what zoning district you're in, what kind of development structure you have. You have to solve your stormwater and you have to provide the parking. And those don't disappear under an MFRC.
No. And I
And
mean,
height, let's add height in there too, you have to maintain your height.
well, yeah, that's, I think, a given that the town has just articulated as a policy, just for, appearance and whatever, but but the others. And I know you mentioned in here, wetland is mentioned as a real constraint, but there's very, very little wetland that we really need to be concerned with in the hamlets.
Well, there
I
is,
mean, maybe
there's
Millwood you do
always
actually,
been,
right? You got that area.
A little bit.
Yeah,
there has always been a calculation factor of a county, you can only credit 30% or 33% of your wet area towards your developed area.
Right.
And that's across the town in every zoning district.
so again, it seems to me that there should be some policy articulated that says, this is what we would like to do, this is what we would like to see. Solve for X now, in terms of we have constraints of stormwater, we have constraints on parking, but given those, what do we wanna see? What do we think we can absorb in terms of the existing infrastructure or improvements to the infrastructure? Or other devices and strategies, for example, on stormwater. I remember one application I can't recall if it went through or not, but I remember they had to get all kinds of easements on all the other properties to cross for drainage, and I think finally it fell through because there were a couple holdouts and said, nope, not on my property, not across my property.
So I would put it back to you, what do you need in order to help solve some of the conflicts or understand the code? How can I help you understand this more or help you?
Well, I don't understand any of the 2%, 1% stuff.
What do you mean, 1% of 5%?
What I would like,
It's like milk.
what I would like to say about the 2% or 1% is I would say, let's not start there, right?
Yeah.
Let's look at the easy stuff, the conflicts.
So, you sent out those two maps, was Monday
Yes.
Today, I think.
I can't,
Of those-
the computer, I cannot generate them up here.
Of those, I mean, how many, let's just start with the acreage size, right? That's an easy one. How many of those properties are, let's say, less than a quarter acre, quarter to a half, whatever, I was looking through the zoning here, half to one and greater than one kind of thing. Because I looked up this property, this is like 0.17 acres, the 133 King Street, according to our taxes. I mean, that's pretty
And we
dense.
looked at the site, they presented right? They presented like 2 months ago.
No.
No, that's
across the street.
that's a different
Oh, that's not the
one.
Tavo
I
site?
thought
No, the
it was
Tavo site
Tavo.
was a
211 is
concept.
Oh, so that's a whole
Yeah.
different site.
Yeah, it's a whole different
Yeah.
site.
Oh.
Like I'm saying, so when you have one applicant, right, and here's coverage calculations, and like, yeah, that seems right. But then you start adding several different applicants coming in with a different interpretation.
Right.
That is the issue that I am faced with right now.
And that is why it's going to you, because again, as the planning board.
Yeah.
We wanna get your input, again, for legislation, back to the town board and work with Sabrina and how we fix that very issue, right?
Right.
Because, you know, and again, it starts with, to your point, let's look at the metrics first, let's look at, you know, the acreage size. And I know you did an analysis of that, so let's start there and see what we come up with. Again, it's gonna be a back and forth on legislation, because again, this is something that you're gonna have to clarify. And it's gonna be obviously rolling up your sleeves and, you know,
Well, and I can tell you, I put together, I worked with Jeff, who's on the screen there, and we put together the table of suggested potential adjustments. I sent that to you, and then we started talking about it. I'm like, well, maybe we should do it differently. You know, maybe we should add minimums in or max. Like, I can change this 5 ways till Tuesday, right? But the question is, for me, a good planning standpoint, consistent with the comp plan, is to have a diversity of housing, which means you would want an applicant to not do all senior. You don't want them to do all AFFH. You want a mix, right? Our most successful AFFH project in this community is the Cupola building.
Yeah.
All right, and that is not only most successful for our town, it is most successful countywide.
Yep.
Okay, so keeping that in mind, how do we structure the thresholds within the incentives to create that instead of all doing AFFH or all doing senior?
So
by incentives,
We're-
to be clear, we're just talking about density,
Yes.
correct? That's all we're talking about.
Correct.
So when you're looking at incentives, it's about, okay, how much density can I get if I do X, Y, and Z? That's what we're talking
so
about.
how do we go from here? Do the 6 of us get together on a Tuesday night and start hashing this out? But we're not allowed to do that because we can't get to, I mean, so how
Well,
do
we'd
we,
have,
how do we
it's
work
another-
stuff?
It's another meeting, it's
It's a meeting, it's a work session.
Okay.
It's a work session for you guys. It's what can I provide to you to help walk you through the issues in this code?
Are we allowed as a board to organize directly with staff in preparation for that board meeting?
Yeah.
You can
Like if I wanted to come in and sit with staff to have a better understanding of some of this stuff, so when we have a board meeting, I could work with my
can do
fellow
that.
board
Yeah,
members?
absolutely.
You can do that, you can meet with Sabrina, meet with
Then you'll be
staff,
way
and
ahead
have
of
that
us.
discussion.
Well,
You just-
maybe
you
that
just
might be
can't-
good, right?
You just can't do it as a quorum.
Yeah, I know,
I
but that's
can't
why.
meet with all of you
Right.
Gotcha, I
in
understand.
that setting,
Right.
But that's what should happen, I mean, it all gets done here in this setting, however, if you have a question for Sabrina or for myself or John or any staff, you would approach us and say, hey, look, I have this idea, or what happens if we do this? That's all fair game, and we'll take those notes, and again, Sabrina will take notes of your discussion here at the meeting, and again, this will get continued to the next meeting whenever you're ready to entertain this again. And there'll be another discussion, we'll take notes, and then ultimately, once we get all your ideas and you know, we get the numbers, you know, worked out, at least in a draft form, we'll get that back, you know, Sabrina will do a memo and get it back to the town board, where I'll get it, I'll review it again with Sabrina, and then at some point, when the town board is ready, if they wanna entertain it, they'll entertain it at another meeting.
Yeah, if they wanna call you in a joint discussion to discuss it, that's all when that happens. But right now, I've identified areas
Mhm.
that I need some guidance on. Because I cannot process an application right now.
What's your interpretation of this 1 acre thing? How do you interpret it?
Well, I
and
did
by the
not
way-
interpret it as anything other than an acre until somebody pointed it out to me. That that it's not connected. Right? And with all fairness, in 2015, we were looking at it as an MFRC, so at that time, I was interpreting it as that.
Are there any parcels in the hamlet that are an acre that would even qualify?
There were four total. 2 of them are currently MFRC. 1 is commercial, right now has multiple commercial on it up on top of the hill. And then there's one more behind the Lutheran church.
It's in the map.
Okay.
So
And do we, just out of curiosity, do we know why it was restricted to 1 acre?
I have my suspicions
was
based
just
on the
reaction to Berenson.
history of this code.
Gotcha, okay, fair enough.
The town was at gunpoint, they had to come up with a
Yeah,
code.
in this case, I mean, we studied this in law school, this case, I mean, you didn't have multifamily zoning in the town in the seventies.
Mhm.
So this decision in essence.
It
put-
was like,
It's
Right.
the leading
It's
decision
famous.
still,
Yeah, I
isn't
mean,
it?
I remember taking land use classes 30 years ago and this case was talked about, so. And again, but as a result of that decision and the various amendments that have come through since then, now it's time to kind of clean it up and, get some clarity as to this, because again, your initial code, it was 1979, I think, when the first, this Berenson decision was 1975. And then it was another case that came out that actually, because you all took a stab, when I say you all, the town back in the 70s took a stab at the code.
you were there.
No,
Right.
no, I wasn't.
I wasn't born.
Right.
I was born.
I was
I
born,
was doing the law
however.
school thing on the case, that was it.
I was bored, but not really paying attention.
Right, but with the Berenson case said, well, the first stab that the town had rather, you guys, we had to have multifamily, you didn't have it, so whatever we did didn't work. Then we came up with legislation, there was another case that came out, I believe in 77, I think it was. And it said, okay, this iteration looks good, so in 1979, you guys set forth a new code, allowed multifamily as a result of that decision, and was upheld. And again, since then, there's been about 6 amendments to that MFRC. And again, we've had now, as Sabrina indicated, that we've had some folks who've expressed interest in doing this type of development. We just wanna get ahead of it because again, we don't want any ambiguity. I wanna be able to pick up the code book, and Sabrina does, and you all, and say, what's the proper interpretation here? And now, obviously, an applicant, if they disagree ultimately with the decision that we come up with in the code that gets codified, they can go to zoning board for an interpretation or a variance, whatever the case may be. But we like to avoid that and we like to, implement a code and amendments there too that remove any ambiguity as best we can.
And I would think that there's some there's a change in but in the 1970s to
Last
today.
century,
What?
last century.
And where we are today, there's a change when it comes to, living in the 5-minute walk or the 15-minute circumference.
And sizes of homes have changed and the use of a car has changed, lots of
Correct.
things have changed
Lots
in
of
the past
things have
50 years.
changed, Uber,
And that other case, sorry.
no
Yeah.
more Blockbuster, I mean,
No, ride sharing has become a much bigger
Blitz.
thing.
yeah.
Blitz versus Town of Newcastle was the case that came out after Berenson, which said that what the town did in terms of legislation was acceptable. Just one, for the record.
Closing the loop.
That's all.
Right, and so happy to dig in deeper with you. This is really just an overview. I mean, I think that, part of it is really just looking at the code and making some decisions. So,
Noodle it.
So next Tuesday, we don't have a joint session?
No.
Because an email was sent out.
there,
about
it was, the town board was thinking of that, but they felt that it was better that your board wrestle with it first.
Do we hold it for ourselves?
Yeah, we can put it on the agenda, is
If you
next
want-
time around.
I mean, we all have the slot held, do we get together?
no.
We have to check on room availability, but if you wanna insert another meeting,
Oh, for next Tuesday, you're saying?
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, because what's gonna happen is it's gonna keep getting the can, it's gonna be kicked down the road and we don't have a
well,
meeting in the middle of
you have meetings scheduled where we can put it on as a discussion item, if you.
Oh, okay, I guess so.
Right, and
Just like we
every
did
meeting,
tonight.
we can put it on as a discussion.
Yeah, you also have the option, again, depending on room availability, to schedule special meetings. Again, I've done comp plans in other legislation, other communities where planning boards have had special meetings where they had this they had legislation
Exactly.
just discussed informally as a workshop.
Yeah,
Amongst
roll up your
themselves,
sleeves, put it
consultants,
out on
right.
the table type of thing.
And you're free to do that as well, again, provided the room is available, and it doesn't have to be on a Tuesday, it could be on whatever night, as long as it's noticed, you could meet.
Can you notice the town board that we're gonna show up at their meeting next week and do this? So I mean, there's the acreage side and then there's the incentive side. The acreage side, I think, need some information on, but from the incentive side, if nothing else, cleaning it up is something that I think is very beneficial to do sooner rather than later, because you have the you know, these pending applications.
Well, I think it's not just the incentives, I think it's the lack of connectivity
Yeah.
and the conflict in the code. That needs to be for me, like if I had to choose a priority, those are easier to address than making decisions based on.
It seems
Right,
to
the
me though,
conflict lets you go forward as one applicant's reading it one way and the other applicant's reading the other way. Now you'll have, no guys, it's this way.
Correct.
You can't do that right now.
And yes, correct, and part of that will be size.
Can anyone argue that us changing this, that we're acting in an arbitrary, capricious manner as it relates to interpretation and whatever, 2016, 2000, whatever, this is how the town viewed it, and now you're modifying it and I wanna be grandfathered in?
Well, you don't, right now you have, there's nothing to grandfather at this point, you've had those projects already in place that have been the two, right, since
Yes.
2020, so those are done,
they're done.
they're done,
No,
so.
I think he's saying maybe there was a project that came up and had to stop because of the confusion, right? And now they're gonna go, right, is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
You know, I mean,
Yeah,
unless,
there's no
There's
project that has come up that has stopped because of confusion
Okay,
in relation to this code.
Okay.
gotcha.
Okay, the confusion in relation to this code has been born out of several applicants coming to me with different interpretations, my review of everything that they're providing me, going, wow, I can definitely see there's some problems here.
But it seems to me that, I mean, it's very easy for us to say, Sabrina, we support you, let's get the conflicts cleaned up.
Yeah, okay.
Why don't you do it
Uh-huh.
in your spare time? But the other issue is, some of those necessarily are policy driven. And so therefore, I mean, this is legislation anyway, so the town board's gonna have to weigh in on that. We're not going to do this.
Right, this is
town board
this is a
legislation.
memo from the planning board to
Right.
the town board.
But it seems to me that to resolve the conflicts in some cases, for example, there's an apparent conflict about this 1 acre. Okay, so we say, take that out. Well, wait a second, some people say, well, that's a huge policy decision that you've made because now you've opened up, development to all kinds of additional applications. So fundamentally is not just clearing up an administrative conflict, it is necessarily also undertaking a policy decision. And there's gotta be a process for that the public is involved with the town board. I mean, we can talk about it, but we're just gonna make a recommendation to the town board. The town board is the body, charged with making the changes.
And to your point, Mr. Chairman, you're right, so what happens is, you'll have discussions about policy, again, there's the easy part, which is cleaning it up in terms of the text and the table, that's one issue, right? And then the things that you're addressing, those comments can be given to Sabrina, she'll go back to the town board, we'll discuss it, but ultimately, what's gonna happen is, you're gonna have, yes, you'll have some policy issues that you may wanna raise, but ultimately, it's gonna go back to the town board when and if they decide to propose legislation. That's what the public hearings are for, they're gonna set it for a public hearing, people will come out, they'll discuss it, they'll entertain, they'll talk about policy, the board will talk about policy. The local law that's being proposed can change or not, that's where it comes out, but right now, you're kind of right at the rolling up your sleeves stage.
But we
You've been
also-
asked, you've been asked to look at it, clean it up, and obviously make recommendations that you think, again, because you're the board that's gonna be applying this,
Yes.
right? So you gotta kind of make it user friendly for you all to apply and for staff when applicants come in, cause I know we have counsel here who I've known for many years who would say to me, Mr. Sharetta, there's an ambiguity here and that's, to be construed in my client's favor and I know he's done it, so so just to that point, it's a fluid issue, right, fluid thing to happen, so you're gonna propose comments and changes, both policy and otherwise, but it's ultimately the town board that's gonna make that decision on
Right, but
legislation.
in order for us to do this, going back to Jeff's point, it seems to me we need metrics as well. I mean, we just can't do this, because we feel we really need to have some data in terms of what's involved.
There's big difference between 100% incentive on a 1 acre site versus a
Right.
quarter acre site.
And I guess the only question I would ask, and I understand this might be far afield, but like, I mean, are there similarly situated municipalities? Like, in other words, does anyone go through that exercise to see how someone else would, you know, in other words, I don't know, we're sort of trying to address these issues, and to me, I'd be a little bit curious to see, well, again, the municipalities are unique, but to the extent that maybe other towns have had certain successes, right? Do you look at how they how they deal with similar issues in the code, that sort of thing? I mean, cause we're sort of solving, I appreciate we're solving some of these inconsistencies, but ultimately, maybe it goes to Bob's point, like, what is the ultimate goal here? And if, and I think if you can align your goals with, again, other places, it would, I don't know who would do this, but to look at what they've done to see what successes they've had.
Like a model ordinance.
Yeah, I mean, we could look to other communities, but again, this whole decision was based on a specific case and legislation that followed. And again, when it comes to the land use, you have to start with the Bible or whatever it's the comp plan, that's where it starts, right? So that is your blueprint, that's what you have to start with for any decision that's made, you gotta start with that comp plan. So look there first, and we could look at other communities and how they dealt with similar issues, but this is kind of unique in a sense. Again, there are other municipalities that handle it differently. There are municipalities that have had multifamily, housing, memory care. I mean, it's in the commercial zones. We can look at those, but what you're being asked to do is look at your comp plan. What does it call for, and try to make this fit with that.
Right, like I don't think, after working with Jeff, who's had experience in dealing with the percentages in incentives, right? He's had experience with that. He's the only engineer that I know that was able to figure that out relatively easily and explain it to me. Not combat me on it saying your math is wrong. No, he explained it. He even came up with like an automatic formula, right, to plug and play. Easy. The percentages are the easy part here, people. That's not the issue. The more complicated are the inconsistencies, the development coverage. 2035 or no 2035. There's an incentive based on low to moderate income based off of some reference document, blah, blah, blah. That no longer exists.
Yes, right. That's the discrepancy with 1A and 4, I think 1 and
Yes.
4.
Yeah.
1 and
You're
4A.
That was the 1 and 4A.
1 and 4,
Right, so we should probably remove 1.
1, yeah.
But is that incentive percentage better than the 4A? And better not in the sense of more, but better for our goals?
So we can make recommendations, the board ultimately will make a decision.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Correct. And I will get you whatever data or resources that you need to help this conversation. I will explain it to you to the best of my abilities.
Right, and because we'll be interpreting it, we really have to have this done as, code for dummies, so we can get it and understand it.
And no height and parking structures.
Exactly, yeah, please.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you just say one thing, or if you
That's
don't
up
want
to-
it,
it's
I
up to the chair.
understand.
Sure.
I do,
As long as it's not about an application.
oh, no, not at all. It's just about,
You wanna
The fact
introduce
that I-
yourself, Adam?
You need
Pardon me?
microphone,
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
took it away, sorry.
Hi, I'm Adam Weinstein, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, from Hockerman, Torrella, and Weinstein, and the client is King Street Commons LLC. I think they were the ones looking back at the records, predates me.
Yep.
They came in again to speak to Sabrina, and I would say they were pretty confused by what was going on, so they didn't make an application. And I've never quite seen an ordinance like this. We support Sabrina's recommendation to you, obviously, to clean it up. I would say we think it's pretty clear because the ordinance provisions in BR refer to MFRC, that acreage and setback are governed by the text of 410H2, and they don't apply here. But the tables are different, even though they're not incorporated. The density incentive formulas, I will tell you it took me a long time to figure out what's being done, and I wouldn't swear to you to what they mean.
You're a lawyer.
And it is right, I don't do math, but I mean, to me,
Just
one
only tenths, yeah,
based on what I've heard your own consultants say, they view those things are 1 of 4% should turn out to be 25%, and 2 of 5% should be 40%. I mean, I think that's how the numbers come out, but even if that's not how you interpret it, I would think you want to put a percentage in there, or even a fixed total. It doesn't make sense as is. Coverage is a problem. I mean, that kind of coverage, frankly, is going, and that's ambiguous too, whether it applies, but that kind of coverage, for example, on King Street, means you're never going to get the kind of development that fits in with multifamily housing. It's going to be businesses, and maybe that's a policy decision you wanna make. And the only final thing on the incentive formulas, and that gets a little more complicated, is we do think it should be calculated on the gross lot area. It's something, when you get down the road, if you're really digging into this and you wanna hear from us, we certainly can get into. I know it's late, you do have our letter, and I think you
Great.
listen to me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And Lino has your number.
Great, so what Mr. Wexstein said eloquently, my comments were 3 words to Sabrina, which I will not repeat because I can't say, but basically like, really? You know, because I had the same issues when I read it that Adam pointed out as well with respect to the inconsistencies and the ambiguities, so, you know, thank you, but that's the same issue.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Thank you.
So how do you wanna move forward?
Yes,
Do you just wanna table it until your next meeting and give you time to absorb what I've written, what I've given you?
well, if can you provide us with I guess alternatives to the resolution of conflicts? In other words, if we did it this way, this is what is likely to happen. If we do it this way, it's, you know, I mean, it's very obvious to me, if you eliminate the 1 acre, all kinds of things happen. So what's the alternative? Do we not use acreage at all? I don't know if that's even appropriate for
Well,
the
I
hamlets.
can tell you because, you know, the projects that have come to me are of different sizes, right? There's not a lot of 1 acre properties.
No.
In the hamlet, and when you look at a 1 acre property or larger than 1 acre, right, your base density is equivalent to 15 units, right? So if you get to 100% of that, it's a 30-unit development. When you're talking about a less than acre property, if you can only put 2 units on, you're asking for a 3rd unit. You know, or to redesign those 2 units to be a little bit bigger. You know, so there's a big differential from what I understand to be the number of units in relation to the size. We're not talking huge numbers on small properties.
Yeah, I think the acreage thing limits you to so much, right? I mean, if you open it up to half acre, quarter acre, all those properties have so much more value now to do stuff.
Right, but the value to do stuff is not, you know, 3 stories, 15 units, it's
still very
No, but it's
two
still,
units.
but it's still a couple units, that's still,
Yes.
you just,
It's
it's
do I
creative
take
and
this, it's do I take the house, the old house that's 3 floors with a commercial use on a rickety porch and 2 less than sub apartments above, can I build a nice townhouse? You know, or build a nice 3-unit development there, right? So you're not really trading, you're not really replacing.
But if you could do 4 units or 6 units, then it makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, right, but I think that we have to remember, we're not talking about changes to height.
No, but I'm not saying with height, you
Yeah.
can still do it within the footprint. I mean,
Yeah.
the units don't have to be 2,000 feet, right? The units could be smaller.
Yeah.
And
Well, right
there's-
now
there's
you have
ways.
units, you have a minimum size in here.
I know, we talked about that.
Yes, you know, so again, you know, I can give you alternatives and what ifs to the things that I've identified, but Greg's bringing up the size of units, you know?
Yep.
It's like we learned, you know, when we were going through the exercise of the seeker for the form-based code, when we were talking about height, right? And we were talking to businesses and what type of ceiling height they wanted. You know, that was based, the proposed ceiling height under that exercise was to meet the needs of businesses today, of the service businesses that are surviving. It was, you know, the heights that we have on first floors in our hamlet are not conducive to service uses of today. Yes, you can have a yoga studio, but you won't have a spin studio. Do you know what I'm saying? So when you think about service uses, we can't even do in some of the existing buildings proper ADA access to put a restaurant in because you can't get to the bathroom. You know, without huge investment. So when we talk about living, I know people, you know, there was a while there where houses were being built with huge cathedral open spaces. Well, go through, you know, a winter trying to heat that. Right? You know, it's like, what is that balance? What is the market demand?
It's almost as if we need a matrix of all the various possibilities and sizes. It's almost like an AI task, plug it in.
Yeah.
And the readout in terms of what the maxes would be, and then if we're happy with the maxes, fine, if not, then it seems to be legislate accordingly if that's too great, if the town board thinks that's too great.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about messing with the sizes, thanks Greg there, but you know.
Yeah, and I
Oh,
think
you
too,
should
we're-
see all the notes and ideas I have.
What I think is important from a you know, just looking like to illustrate it, once you've absorbed it and had the questions with Sabrina and talk about the sizes, the metrics, what I find helpful is, alright, so we have a kind of a construct of what we think we wanna do, right? Is to take a couple of properties and say, okay, if I were to apply this type of application on this property, how is it gonna look? How are we gonna interpret it? And you could do that, cause it's very helpful, cause there are times where in municipalities, we do legislation, and then a developer comes in and looks at it, and you know, they build a box or they design the box, and ultimately what results is something that you really killed or doesn't make any sense. And I've been on the other side of that where I'll give you an example where I had a municipality had a TOD zoning, they legislated it, they had all these great incentives, metrics we had to follow, but when I actually had my client apply those metrics, what you got was just no one would ever wanna build it. So they spent 4 years doing this, and then it took an application to come before the board to say, this makes no sense. So they went back and started it again and cleaned up a lot what they thought was a great idea, but what they did was they said, okay, what can we build and what do we wanna see built? And they kind of said, okay, looking at these metrics, this is the box that we get. I'm just using an example. And it's a useful exercise because once you've established what you think are the recommendations to the town board, have a workshop and say, okay, Sabrina, we've looked at these 3 addresses. What can we get in terms of density, utilizing what we're proposing? I think it's a useful exercise because later on down the line, folks like Mr. Wegstein here will be doing that, and hopefully you'll have the answer ahead of time before it becomes a formal application.
Or on the other side, the flip side, we have a kind of a tradition in this town, something comes in and people go, we didn't think of that.
Right.
That's a horror, right?
Right.
The code says that.
Yep.
So it goes both ways.
Correct.
I can tell you with our property, it's 7,400 square
Adam.
feet. I shouldn't even be talking, I'm sorry. Our property is 7,400 square feet. There is currently a 5 apartment unit building on it. It was, I believe, approved and built in 1986, so back then they probably didn't think the 1 acre applied. It's multifamily. And what the client has in mind, if the zoning were interpreted the way we think it should be and the coverage disappeared, or if the board ultimately comes up with the zoning that works, would be 2 3-bedroom units instead, but something that's modern looking as opposed to a box, something that would fit in. And I promise I won't say anything more. Thank you.
So what's the pleasure of all of us here? Do you wanna try to meet next Tuesday? Do you want to take time and get your thoughts together and perhaps even send individually notes to Sabrina and Jeff and try to get some feedback or some information? Do you wanna meet with them privately during their office hours? It's like the professors after lectures? I mean, I was very intrigued to hear that Jeff can do all this too.
If you read through it and you're digesting it and there's data or analysis that you need, right, to email me and I can try and furnish it for you.
Yeah, I think you're better off, just my suggestion, digest the memo, jot down whatever questions, ask Sabrina or myself or John. And then at that point, once you've gotten the answers, right, I think that's when you should probably schedule a workshop to discuss those comments. I think next week to have a workshop, it might be premature because I'm sure there are a lot of questions you're gonna have in a memo, so you may wanna, do some homework first, assess it, ask the questions, and then when you're ready, schedule that meeting with the, with your board to discuss either, as a special meeting or add it to an agenda item to a regular
Right,
meeting.
if you guys wanted to talk about size, for example, I'd wanna pull up all of the properties in the BR and the BRP zoning district and kind of do an analysis of the size of property. Where are all of them falling? Like how many properties are less than a quarter of an acre? How many, to give you that information. So you knew the world, because I don't know, depending on how it is interpreted, right? Do we seeker, how does that play into whatever legislation the town board adopts? We need to be cognizant of that, and to do our recommendations based off of real data, I think is important. So I would wanna generate that information for you, and there may be other information that you want or you think would be helpful to really penciling your suggestions out that I can provide to you.
So to move it along just administratively, if I offer two alternatives. One is to get your thoughts together and send them in to Felicia and Sabrina, and I can try to kind of put them together as a single memo. If you prefer, you can send it to me, I could do the same, send it all to Felicia or Sabrina to do a memo. I think that would be a good way. I wouldn't want it to just linger for another couple of weeks, so I think as this is hot, read through it and your thoughts and your comments, et cetera. I think it's, sizes and metrics, et cetera, whatever it is. I think we should articulate those. It will be kind of a mess when it comes from all 5 or 6 of us at this point, but we've got to start to assimilate this into something that's cogent.
Yeah, and I do wanna say in my memo, I have the table of interpretation in the back, right? There is a column called proposed action. I can think of 5 different ways to write that proposed action to you based after looking and thinking about this, right? So what I have suggested here is not definitive, it's suggestive, right? After that column was put together and Jeff and I kind of worked on this a little bit, we're like, well, maybe we should do maximums so that we don't end up with all AFFH, or maybe do minimums so we do get some diversity in ADA. Do you know what I'm saying? So you can look at it a million different ways, and it really comes back to starting at, do you want that kind of diversity in the housing? Because even though the comp plan calls for it, where does this board sit on it now? The comp plan was done in 2018.
Well, that's only one aspect of it, obviously, because we also talked about appearances and feel and architectural feel, et cetera, and the fabric of the town, et cetera, scale. So all these things have to be considered, it seems to me, in coming up with that policy, because eventually the town board's gonna have to make that determination after it goes through its process, with public feedback, et cetera, but it's our opportunity to help at least launch the conversation. Okay, yeah.
May I comment, council?
Sure, alright, sure.
Microphone.
Hi, Ben Herman, 10 North Place. Just wanted to point out a couple of observations based on some comments that have been made. Believe the 1 acre minimum is noted in at least 2 places in town code, with reference to its Schedule 60 Attachment 3. I'm not sure if that's the proper reference, but that's the footnote. Also clearly in I believe it's section 6300 of the town code clearly says that the minimum acreage is 1 acre for MFRC. So a bit curious, all this time being spent on such a matter, but appreciate that it was referred to by the town board. So we just ask for public record that be noted and those 2 references reviewed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other thoughts, comments, board members?
Here's mine.
Had enough?
No. Clear as mud.
Yes, exactly. Okay, I don't think we have to take any action or schedule this at this point.
No, you just need to provide direction as to,
Well, is everyone okay with that suggestion of getting your thoughts out to Sabrina? And then we can put those all together in a workshop or otherwise and start to put together a memo. And by the way, again, if you feel comfortable with it, if you just want to articulate what you think the goal should be, because that's gonna be useful as well. You know, where do you wanna end up? You're doing all the percentages, et cetera, that's all great, whatever, but it's not really just numbers. Eventually, you gotta talk about scale, you gotta talk about feel, you talk about what we anticipate people really wanna see in the town.
Yeah, I think.
And the town that they wanna live in.
Your comment about your comment about policy, boards change. Our board changes, town board changes, all the boards change, so what we might feel as a policy might not necessarily be the next policy. I think the only governing policy we have is the comp plan until the comp plan gets changed. And for now, I think we let that lead us as much as we can. And you are right, there's many things in the comp plan that talk about architectural aesthetics and beautification and connectivity in the downtown. So we shouldn't just focus on a variety of housing. But maybe that's the first step, we all just revisit
The comp plan.
a few things that are appropriate in the comp plan, not read the whole thing because it's like this thick, but
It's not that thick.
maybe we start
there's
there.
a lovely website. that
There
is
is,
posted
and then
on.
we maybe, I think if we all take a shot at this. I'm wrestling, do we all take a shot and send it to them for them to figure out? Or do we take a shot and our next meeting, we all talk about our notes together as a group?
Well, I thought what we would do is just get our notes to them and they can just assimilate these and not
Okay,
change
and not try
them.
to combine them,
Maybe
just,
categorize them, and
Okay.
so it'll be conflicts, for example, and we'll have.
Why don't you send me them and I'll tell you if I can do anything
Okay,
with
fair
them,
enough.
or I just regurgitate them back to you
Well,
on
I think
pieces
the
of paper.
regurgitation is actually,
I'm sorry?
in an order is probably what we would want. Don't change these pearls.
Oh, I would never.
And then we will be embarrassed. You don't have to put the title on or who wrote them. We can just look at them later on and
you
say.
can tell by handwriting.
And just determine whether or not that's a valid comment or not, that's something we wanna talk about, it's something we wanna include. We've done this many times, in these workshops this way, and
And if
many
you
things
wanna,
get
if you
thrown out
wanna
very
come in
quickly.
and talk to me about
Yeah.
understanding it, I'm happy to sit with you and talk to you and give you my 2 cents.
And I won't rewrite the code, I promise.
Right, exactly. Okay, so,
Cool.
is that clear as mud, is that less clear as mud, or?
It's more diluted mud.
More diluted, but so I think again, read the comp plan. Pick out the nuggets that are important to you.
PlanNewcastle.org maybe?
And again, if there's something
Get
really
there.
in that comp plan that
Yeah,
you
that's
think
what I was
is
gonna
really
ask for.
important that you wanna emphasize, you
Hang on,
should
let me
mention
go.
it.
Yeah.
If you think it's something in the comp plan that's not being addressed adequately, that you want to see addressed, that's fine.
Like I know diversity was important, but I don't know if it was necessary within the same building. So,
No, that certainly wasn't, no, that was never mentioned, but it's very interesting, I mean, my thought on that when Sabrina was talking about it, the cupola building is
a
just-
good
it's just
example.
a wonderful success. And it seems to me, for example, that if you're going to have incentives, one of the incentives would be to have a mixed building, that might be the greatest of all the incentives that you have in here.
the more, right,
You may want to do something like they did out on Route 100. We have ownership and a rental unit and the same thing. You may give incentives for that. That's a great model that works out there. Does it work in Hamlet? I don't know, but it actually does, because Yorktown does it.
It's plannewcastle.us. See?
Okay,
You can find everything you need.
alrighty, great.
One more motion.
One more, yes, I know.
Motion
The
to
important
close.
one. Is there a motion to close the meeting?
Motion?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alright, done.
Thank you for your courtesy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your memo.